840, Big 550, KTRS. David Stokes, Show Me Institute. Good morning, David Stokes.
Good morning, McGraw. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning, David.
You want to talk about what's going on down at this legislative session down in Jefferson City?
Well, 2 weeks to go. This is where
all the damage is done.
Well, this is where the word omnibus bill comes into play, as things you think are dead suddenly get reappeared on sort of all-encompassing legislation, and the problem with that is you can have a bill which suddenly has some really good things on it that all of a sudden has some really bad things on the same bill, or vice versa.
I believe they call that a Christmas tree, do they not?
Right? Yeah, you're right.
But here's what I don't understand about this, and you spent years in county government as Buzz Westfall's honcho, right? You were with Buzz Westfall? Were you not?
No, that would be the
wrong party.
I would work for Kurt
Odenwald. Gotcha. Okay, right. So I thought there was a law or a rule that says you're only allowed to pass one bill that has one subject on it.
There is that's in the state constitution, and it applies to state legislation, and people violate it all the time. And if somebody has the resources to sue to try and enforce that law, then that is certainly a way to get bad laws tossed out. It happens regularly, but somebody has to have the resources to file a lawsuit and
so
and
they can pass a bill at the end of the session to have all these different subjects in this one bill, and they have a law that says they can't do it, but it's law until somebody fights it?
Yeah, basically. I mean, because there's opinion in that, like what's related. You can put new things in a bill, and if it's the same topic, I mean, if it's just a different law on property taxation attached to a bill on property taxation,
right,
then that's perfectly fine. Now, what if it's a different type of taxation? Like how narrowly do you define related? If it's a sales tax bill on a property tax bill, well, it's all taxation. So to give a little bit of benefit of the doubt to the legislators, there is some room for interpretation there, but they go way too far, way too frequently, and unfortunately, it only gets enforced when people sue to enforce it.
Right. All right. Let's talk about this income tax cut vetoed by Governor Nixon. Are the Republicans going to come home this year, and are Democrats going to help them out?
Well, I understand they need the latter, and that they need at least one Democrat to vote for it in the House.
Assuming all the Republicans come home.
Assuming so, and I would think this year, election year, leadership knew the problem that they had last year. I wouldn't be surprised at that.
A lot of people said that John Deal wouldn't have brought it to the floor and got it done. He knows he has a Democrat in his pocket.
Well, that's right, but it's also the office of the governor can bring an unbelievable amount of pressure,
right,
on particularly members of their own party, and I have no doubt that the majority leader can bring a great deal of pressure and has worked this out. And he obviously had the votes to pass it originally,
right?
But we'll see when they go for the veto override at some point this week or next how that's gonna. There's a lot of factors at play here. Unfortunately, I mean, it shouldn't come down to political pressure or politics for who's running for re-election and who's not, but it all too often does. In fact, it pretty much inevitably does. So I'd like to just have the discussion on, is the tax cut a good thing for Missouri? And I get so frustrated, all the doom and gloom of what a catastrophe it'll be, this comparatively tiny tax cut. And I support this because it's a step in the right direction. But the idea that over the next 5 to 10 years that we're going to go from a top rate of 6% to 5.5%, and this is going to be some sort of drastic cuts to Missouri services, I think that's way overstated.
Well,
and I think there will be benefits nonetheless to a small tax cut.
The governor will tell you that he thinks the bill is written in such a way that the income tax goes away altogether.
Well, I don't believe that to be true, and I don't believe most lawyers and judges would interpret that. That certainly wasn't the intention of the law, and the intent of the law can be considered by the judges. I don't think anybody really thinks that if this bill gets passed, all of a sudden the top tax rate goes away and nobody's paying taxes anymore on above $10,000.
What's this TIF legislation? Is something going to get passed down there?
I really hope so. There's some good bills in the state legislature to address the idea of when cities override the county TIF commission, which we have seen here so frequently,
right,
in St. Louis County and St. Charles County, Ellisville, Shrewsbury, many more that we've discussed on
where
this.
Where the TIF commission says it's not worthy, and the town says we don't care, we still want to give the TIF.
Right, and it's important to point out the TIF commission of a county of 1 million people trying to take the big picture view of it and the city council of a town of 5,000 people gets to override the county TIF commission. It's absolutely absurd
Right.
that the city gets to make these decisions for all these taxing districts that are so much bigger and more broad than that small little individual city. So there's some legislation to address that and put caps on how you can spend your tax increment financing money in such a scenario where a city overrides the county TIF commission. Be limited to the cost of demolishing buildings, grading land, and a few other very basic uses of TIF money. And so would TIF still continue in those situations? It would, but it'd be more strictly capped. And this legislation is in both the House and Senate. You can read a lot more about it at showmedaily.org. That's the Show Me Institute blog. And it would be very, very positive. And it's passed out of committee in both the House and Senate. It just needs to pass through the full floor here at the end.
What about the roads? There's some rumblings going on that they might do something with road financing, whether it's a gas tax or a sales tax, or what's that all about?
Well, we all get to vote in November. It'll be on our ballot, and every Missourian will get to vote. Well, every registered voter in Missouri will get to vote on whether or not we increase the state sales tax by 0.75 cents, so 0.75% there, to increase funding and spending on highways and bridges. And I support, if this was a gas tax increase, I'd be right out in favor of it. If this was a toll road increase, I'd have been backing it for, I've been backing toll road increases for years, and toll road installations, actually. But this is a sales tax increase, which is really just a terrible way to pay for state highways and bridges. We've got so much information at showmeinstitute.org on why this is bad public policy. When you can pay for things through a user fee, such as a gas tax, it's so much better than paying through general taxes. We will now, think of it this way, if this passes, we're going to be paying for our highways and bridges based on how much we shop and not based on how much we actually drive. And we will, in fact, then be subsidizing driving even further, because if you have a long commute or if you're a trucker, you're not going to see the increased cost of that. Just the person who walks to work or bikes to work will pay the exact same amount for it. That's insane, and I think it's just terrible policy.
It's really interesting. I agree with you 300%. And I won't say that publicly because for all sorts of reasons.
Just between us.
Just between you and me. But it's interesting because you're right. If you choose to live in a neighborhood where you choose to save gas because that's the right thing to do for the environment, the economy, or whatever else, or you just want to save money, and you choose to live within walking distance to a store, or you choose to bike to a store to be healthy and all of that, there's no incentive for you to do that because it costs the exact same for that road as opposed to somebody who's driving 75 minutes to work.
This is why it's such a bad policy idea, and why, as part of this proposal, they will ban further gas tax increases and any toll road installations if the sales tax is passed. So 10 years from now, the situation is going to be even worse. It will be even more impossible to raise the gas tax or to institute tolling. So we will just now be long-term dependent on sales taxes for highways and bridges, which there's not an economist out there or anybody who actually, I think, really fairly thinks through how we should pay for these things that thinks this is a good idea.
It also hurts the retailer, right?
Absolutely.
So you're going to buy a widget, and you know what? It's going to cost me now, 0.75 cents more per dollar or whatever it is, right? It's going to cost me the $10, $20. That just pushes me further to the internet where I'm not paying any taxes.
Absolutely. I mean, there's many, many legitimate, fair, and intelligent objections to this proposal, and I hope people check it. And lots of people. There's Scott Ogilvie, an alderman in the city of St. Louis, has been out leading a fight against it in the city.
So explain why the powers to be went with the sales tax as opposed to the gas tax, because the gas tax is harder to get through. There's more of a lobby against it. What's the reason?
The sales tax polls better.
Really?
It sounds, a 20-cent a gallon gas tax sounds really high. In fact, it's really no more for the average person than a 1-cent sales tax is. For the average person, it comes out to about the same. Sure, if you drive a lot, it's going to cost you more. But if you drive very little, it'll cost you less, and that's the way it should be. But it polls very poorly, so they decided to take the politically simple solution,
right,
which is to enact a very poor policy idea that they think they can get past the voters.
Shocking, really.
Right, they're taking the easy way to raise a lot of money.
Yeah, shocking. Shocking they would actually do that. Well, All right, David Stokes, when can we read you? When can we see you?
We've got a lot of information on all these proposals at showmeinstitute.org. And also, as well, the one other issue I'd like to touch on for a second is there's some proposals out there to ban cities voters from voting on tax subsidies like TIF. The city of St. Louis has put that in, sort of banned the proposal to restrict Peabody and other types of companies. And I think that's a very poor policy idea as well. So you can check all that out at showmedaily.org. Follow me on Twitter at David C. Stokes.
You know, trying to deal with these legislators, might as well just go down to Yellow Farmhouse Winery and crack open a bottle of wine and forget all about it. You can do that, ladies and gentlemen, at Yellow Farmhouse